Sport as a laboratory of transcendence. The limits of the possible and the power of the mind. Introduction. Why sport matters beyond sport. Human history is not only a catalog of wars, inventions, and political revolutions. It is also a record of games. Sport, in its many forms, has been a central part of civilization for millennia, from the Olympic Games of ancient Greece to the mass spectacles of our modern era. But why does sport matter so profoundly? Why do nations hold their breath over a ball crossing a line, or a stopwatch stopping at a fraction of a second? The answer, I suggest, is that sport is not merely about play. It is about possibility. In the field of sport, humanity constructs miniature laboratories of transcendence. We test our bodies, our minds, and our collective belief in the face of odds. Victories on the field often mirror, in condensed symbolic form, the struggles of societies, nations, and civilizations. Sport becomes a rehearsal for history. Few events illustrate this better than the Miracle on Ice of 1980, when a team of American college students defeated the seemingly invincible Soviet Union ice hockey team at the Winter Olympics in Lake Placid. To call it an upset would be an understatement. To understand it fully requires not only historical narrative but psychological, neurobiological, and philosophical reflection. This essay will analyze the Miracle on Ice as a case study in the power of positive thinking in history, focusing on the role of belief, collective psychology, and the human mind's ability to expand the boundaries of what is possible. Next part, historical context. The Red Machine versus the Dreamers. The Soviet Colossus. By 1980, the Soviet Union's hockey team was more than just a sports team. It was a symbol of state power. Nicknamed the Red Machine, the Soviets had dominated international hockey for decades. Their players were technically listed as amateurs, but in reality they were full-time athletes, soldiers of sport, meticulously trained by state programs that blended athletic science, discipline, and ideology. Between 1954 and 1979, the Soviets had won 14 world championships and 7 out of the last 9 Olympic gold medals. They had crushed professional NHL teams in exhibitions. Their passing, skating, and conditioning were the envy and terror of the hockey world. To face the Soviets was not only to face a hockey team. It was to face a system, industrial, political, and cultural, that seemed to embody inevitable victory. The American underdogs. The United States team of 1980 could not have been more different. It was composed mostly of college players, amateurs in the truest sense, many barely in their 20s. Few had international experience. They were not supposed to win even a medal, let alone defeat the Soviets. Yet this very mismatch created a peculiar existential stage. It was David versus Goliath, but played out not with slings and stones, but with skates and sticks. And at the center of it all was one man, Coach Herb Brooks. Next part, Herb Brooks and the psychology of belief. The architect of mental toughness. Herb Brooks, himself a former Olympic hopeful who narrowly missed making the U.S. team in 1960, understood that skill alone could not overcome the Soviet juggernaut. His task was not merely to select players, but to reconstruct their psychology. Brooks was notorious for his grueling practices. Players skated until they collapsed, were pushed beyond exhaustion, endured relentless drills. But beneath the physical torture lay a psychological purpose, to reshape their self-concept. He told them, "You're not talented enough to win on talent alone." The paradox was clear. If they were to win, it would not be by skill but by something more intangible: resilience, belief, unity. Building collective identity. Brooks forced players from rival colleges to abandon their animosities and merge into a single identity. When asked who they played for, he insisted they answer not with their universities but the United States of America. This was more than patriotism. It was a reframing. Each individual was part of something larger than themselves. Psychologically, this was crucial. Research in social psychology shows that shared identity enhances motivation and reduces individual fear. By binding the players into a single we, Brooks was rewiring their mental frameworks. The seed of belief. Brooks knew the Soviets were beatable. But he also knew that his players did not yet believe it. His mission was to plant and nurture that belief. a belief that would become the very condition of possibility for victory. Next part. The game is psychological drama. The weight of history. On February 22, 1980, the semi-final game took place. Few expected anything but another Soviet demolition. Indeed, only weeks earlier, the Soviets had humiliated the Americans 10-3 in an exhibition match at Madison Square Garden. But belief alters perception. From the opening face-off, the Americans skated not as intimidated boys, but as contenders. Every save by goaltender Jim Craig, every goal scored, reinforced the fragile but growing conviction. We can do this. Momentum and the neurobiology of hope. Hope is not static. It feeds on itself. As neuroscientists have shown, dopamine surges not only when rewards are received, but when they become increasingly likely. Each successful play released neurochemical reinforcement, both in players and in the roaring crowd. By the final period, the improbable had become possible. The Americans led 4-3. The Soviets attacked relentlessly, but the U.S. held on. When the final horn sounded, broadcaster Al Michaels shouted, "Do you believe in miracles?" Yes. Beyond the scoreboard. This was not merely a hockey game. It was a psychological earthquake. A group of amateurs had toppled a dynasty. Belief had become reality. Next part. The science of the impossible. Self-fulfilling prophecy. Sociologists have long noted the phenomenon of the self-fulfilling prophecy. Belief in a possible outcome increases the likelihood of its occurrence. The Americans' victory illustrates this principle at scale. Without belief, effort would have waned. With belief, effort multiplied, probabilities shifted, and what seemed impossible materialized. Learned helplessness versus learned optimism. Contrast this with Seligman's dogs. Helplessness paralyzes action. Optimism mobilizes it. The U.S. team could easily have internalized helplessness after their 10-3 loss. Instead, Brooks inoculated them with optimism. They learned, cognitively and viscerally, that persistence mattered. Neuroplasticity of belief. Repeated exposure to the idea of victory, through Brooks' speeches, through their grueling training, literally reshaped neural circuits. Studies of neuroplasticity confirm that belief-based training builds resilience pathways in the brain. The players' very nervous systems were rewired to persist under pressure. Next part. Sport as existential laboratory. Symbolic warfare. The miracle on ice resonated beyond sport because it occurred during the Cold War. It symbolized not just a game but the confrontation of two world systems. The American victory was framed as democracy defeating authoritarianism, freedom outlasting machinery. In this way, sport became a proxy battlefield, a laboratory of meaning. Nations projected their fears and hopes onto the rink. The victory fed not only the athletes, but millions watching, who saw in it confirmation that the improbable could indeed occur. The human fascination with limits. Sport fascinates precisely because it flirts with the edge of possibility. Roger Bannister's 4-minute mile shattered not only a record but a mental barrier. Once broken, dozens followed. Limits are as much mental as physical. The miracle on ice is a collective version of this. A breaking of a barrier not just for one runner but for an entire nation. Next part. Comparative case studies. Mandela and rugby, 1995. In post-apartheid South Africa, Nelson Mandela used the Rugby World Cup to unite a divided nation. Like MacArthur's "I Shall Return," Mandela's embrace of rugby projected a narrative of hope. The team's victory became a catalyst for reconciliation. Jesse Owens, 1936. Owens' triumph in Berlin under the gaze of Hitler was more than athletic excellence. It was a philosophical statement. The ideology of racial superiority could be defied through the sheer power of human ability. Nadia Comaneci, 1976. The first perfect 10 in gymnastics symbolized the transcendence of the possible. Humanity craves such moments, where the line between possible and impossible is redrawn. Next part. Philosophical reflections. Sport is metaphor for life. At its core, sport is not about goals, medals, or records. It is about the drama of human potential. In every contest we ask, what are the limits? Can they be broken? And the answer again and again is yes. The ontology of hope. Hope in sport as in life is not a luxury. It is an ontological necessity. To be human is to envision a future not yet realized. Sport makes this process tangible, staging our collective dreams in arenas of play. The ethics of belief. But hope must be cultivated wisely. It is not blind optimism but disciplined faith, forged through training, sacrifice, and endurance. Herb Brooks embodied this ethic. Belief was not a slogan but a regimen. Conclusion. Miracles as self-creation. The miracle on ice was not a miracle in the supernatural sense. It was a miracle of human psychology, of belief shaping behavior, behavior altering outcomes, and outcomes rewriting history. Sport, then, is not trivial. It is one of humanity's great laboratories of transcendence. In every match, we rehearse the most profound of philosophical truths, that the mind can expand the horizon of the possible. When the young Americans defeated the Soviet machine, they proved not only that underdogs can win, but that hope itself is a historical force. I truly hope these ideas will inspire you on your own path of discovery. If you know someone who would find this perspective valuable, please share this video with them. And to make sure you don't miss what's next, subscribe and join me for the upcoming videos.